Good morning, church. It's a pleasure to come to you with another devotional today. I wanted to read from Matthew chapter 7, a passage that we're all very familiar with, but maybe we misapply too much in our lives. Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 to 4. Do not judge so that you will not be judged. For in the way you judge, you will be judged, and by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? Sometimes we have this tendency to lump together any kind of criticism, any kind of comment that we might issue to another person as judgment. And this is especially true if this is something that you're guilty of. How can I speak to somebody else's speck when that speck is present in my own eye? Heck, it might even be a log in my own eye. How can I tell somebody else's fault, whether it's intentional or not, when I might be guilty of judging? In ancient Israel, they were assigned property, they were assigned land based on their tribe. And while Israel does have a few areas where it's fairly smooth, the majority of the land is actually hilly or mountainous country. And chances are, if you were an Israelite, you were assigned a piece of land that had hills on it. But you still needed to farm. You still needed to make and grow your own groceries. Maybe you'd have a vineyard. And you'd have these vineyards on the side of the mountain, but not growing at a slope. What they would do is they would create these terraces. And if you've ever seen a photo of Asia, for example, a stereotypical photo, you'll see these rice paddies that look like steps coming off of a mountain. And these steps are the terraces. They're a way of creating level surfaces on a sloped hill. So what the Israelites would do is they would create these terraces. They would have these hilly areas, and they would carve out smooth and flat regions where they could farm. And it was your plot of land that you would farm. Now, in order to make these plots of land, you'd need to have these retaining walls. Walls made of stones about the size of a grapefruit, maybe a little bigger. These wouldn't be large stones, and you would make a wall out of those stones, and in that wall you would make your smooth and flat land that you could farm. These terraces were the way of making an area that was farmable, that could have water on it, that wouldn't just drain off. And obviously, as time would go on, the rocks that were a part of your wall, they would fall out, and you'd have to replace them. If you didn't, the terrace was in risk of failing. And it would fail and cause a catastrophe, not just for you, but for all of your neighbors downhill. If you get washed out, then the only place for all that dirt to go is down. Down onto your neighbor's plot, down onto that neighbor's plot, all the way down the mountain. And eventually you're taking out a whole hillside. So maintaining these terraces was vitally important. Now imagine you're walking down this terrace. Imagine you're walking down your plot of land. And you notice that your neighbor's wall has a rock that's missing. It had gone somewhere. The retaining wall is now unstable. Given a little bit more time and a little bit more water, it will collapse. What don't you see though? You don't see your own wall. As you're walking on this terrace, you can get down onto your neighbor's property and walk across your wall. But chances are you're just going to notice your neighbor's wall. Your neighbor, however, below you, will notice and see your wall. And the thing is, we need our neighbors. Just like the farmers in those times needed their neighbors to catch spots that they missed, we need our neighbors. If my neighbor isn't watching me, then I will be in trouble. And if the neighbor above me isn't watched by me, he will be in trouble. But not only that, if I ignore my neighbor's missing stones and his retaining wall, my farm is in danger. My plot of land is in danger. We don't like that thinking, though. In our culture, we don't like the idea of looking at somebody else's wall, looking at somebody else's business. Mind your own wall, is what we might say. But the thing is, in order for the walls around us to stand, in order for our hillside to be productive, we need to be on the lookout for trouble and on the lookout for missing stones. And the thing is, your neighbor below you can tell you, hey, You've got a missing stone in your wall, but if we don't care, we will suffer catastrophe. And the thing is, if we notice a missing rock in the wall of our neighbor and we don't tell them, we're in risk of catastrophe. You have to care enough about your wall, and you have to care enough about the wall of your neighbor in order for both of you to be surviving. And it's a beautiful image of community that oftentimes we shy away from, so that we don't fall into the trap of judging or being judged. Accountability has to look a certain way. Our relationship with the person that we're talking to or the person who's talking to us has to look a certain way. Our comments, our criticisms, we feel they have to come from just the right person, otherwise they're not going to be effective. You see, a healthy community of God is one that looks out for each other, to comment and to watch out for each other's walk, to watch out for each other's walls. You see, we shouldn't shy away from looking at our neighbor's wall. Coming from a pure heart and with pure intentions, there's nothing bad about that. Watching out for your friend so that they won't stumble is a good thing. It's not a bad thing to comment and to help and to bring up things that might cause harm to both you and the community, and especially the person that you're addressing. It's a recognition that when we're walking down our own little plot of land, we can't see our shortcomings. We can't see the rocks falling out of our own walls. We need somebody else to help us, somebody else to point it out. We have to be willing to accept that criticism as well as bringing up that criticism to others. And I want to encourage you, in this coming week, don't fear the passage. Don't fear the passage of judging and being judged. If you're coming to the people around you with a pure heart, then you will do them a great service in pointing out things that maybe they're struggling with, pointing out things that maybe they're not doing all the way correctly. It'll be a blessing to you and a blessing to them. So take care, and I'll see you next week.